The peaceful Eloran Confederation faced extinction as the Voidborn consumed their outer colonies. Despite advanced technology, the gentle Elorans lacked any biological capacity for warfare. The great meeting hall of Elora Prime sparkled with its crystal dome catching the light of twin suns. Below, 12 representatives, one from each star system in the Confederation, gathered in emergency session. They sat around a circular table made from the sacred wood of their homeworld, each wearing the flowing blue robes that marked them as council members. Ambassador Taya entered the hall, her steps quick but measured. Her skin had the pale blue tint common to all Elorans, but 3 days without rest had darkened the areas around her luminous silver eyes. As chief ambassador, she had just returned from the outer colony of Novarine, or what remained of it. Honored. "Council," she began, her voice steady despite her exhaustion. "The Voidborn have taken Novarine. That marks the 3rd colony lost in 60 days. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Elder Nori, the oldest member of the council at nearly 400 years, leaned forward on thin arms. "How many survivors?" he asked, though his downcast eyes suggested he already knew the answer. "None," Taya replied. The word hung in the air, like a physical thing. "The Voidborn don't leave survivors. They consume everything, people, knowledge, culture, and add it to their collective." Council member Lena, representative of the Science Division, activated a holographic display in the center of the table. "Our projections show they will reach Elora Prime in 27 days. Our defensive shields cannot withstand their energy weapons." The Elorans had evolved on planets with stable environments and few natural predators. Over millions of years, their bodies had lost the capacity to produce the chemicals needed for aggression. Their hearts could not beat faster in danger. Their minds could not focus under stress. They built remarkable technologies that created beauty and comfort, but never weapons. "What about evacuation?" asked Councillor Juan, his hands nervously adjusting his ceremonial collar. Taya shook her head. "The Voidborn can travel faster than our ships. There is nowhere in known space we can hide." Elder Nori's ancient eyes fixed on Taya. "You have a proposal. I can see it weighing on you." Taya took a deep breath. "We have no choice. We must activate the beacon." The room fell silent. Every Eloran knew what that meant. "The Deathworlders," Elder Nori whispered. "We've observed their violence for centuries. They may destroy us themselves." The Elorans had discovered Earth 300 years ago, but had never made contact. There, scientists had watched with horror and fascination as humans fought wars, created deadly weapons, and somehow survived on a planet filled with disasters and dangerous creatures. The Eloran term Deathworlders wasn't just a name. It was a warning. "The ancient records say they built the beacon as a failsafe," Taya said. "Our ancestors watched the humans evolve and decided that if we ever faced extinction, we could call on them. They theorized that creatures who evolved in constant danger would understand how to fight in ways we never could." Councillor Wren stood up, his tall frame casting a shadow across the table. "We know nothing about them except that they kill each other. How can we trust them with our civilization?" "The Voidborn will definitely destroy us," Taya countered. "Earth's humans are our only hope. At least with them, we have a chance." The debate raged for hours. Some council members argued that accepting extinction with dignity was better than inviting violent aliens into their space. Others desperately hoped the humans might save them, even if the price was high. As the second sun began to set, casting orange light through the crystal dome, Elder Nori called for a vote. "Those in favor of activating the beacon, raise your hand." 7. Hands rose slowly. A majority, but barely. "Then it is decided," Elder Nori said, his voice heavy with doubt. "Ambassador Taya, you will activate the beacon." Taya bowed and left the council chamber. She walked alone through the quiet hallways of the great library, where the beacon had been kept for generations. The room housing it was small and plain, with only a simple pedestal in the center. The beacon itself looked unimpressive. A metal cube no larger than her hand, covered with symbols no Eloran could read. Their ancestors had found it floating in space near the edge of their system, clearly manufactured, but by whom they never discovered. Analysis showed it contained technology far beyond their understanding. As Taya lifted the cube, long range, alarms began to sound throughout the city. She looked at the monitor on the wall. Voidborne ships had appeared on the edge of their system, moving faster than expected. They had days, not weeks. Her fingers found the activation switch, a small depression on one side of the cube. She pressed it firmly, and the device hummed to life, glowing with blue energy. Ancient machinery, dormant for centuries, began broadcasting a signal so powerful it would cross thousands of light years almost instantly. "Please," she whispered to the stars, though she knew no deity listened. "Please let them come. Please, let them help us." The signal shot outward, racing toward Earth. The call was sent, now they could only wait. Admiral June listened to the alien transmission, his weathered face betraying no emotion. 30 years commanding Earth's unified fleet had taught him restraint. The strange signal had arrived without warning, waking every communication system on Earth simultaneously. It bypassed all security protocols and translated itself into every human language at once. The voice speaking was soft and musical, but the message was dire. In the high-ceilinged war room of Earth Defense Headquarters, Admiral June replayed the message for the 5th time. Outside the reinforced windows, the sprawling city of New Seoul glittered in the morning light, citizens going about their day unaware that humanity had just received its first confirmed contact from an alien civilization. "This is Ambassador Taya of the Elleran Confederation. We face extinction at the hands of the entity we call the Voidborne. They have consumed 3 of our worlds. We cannot fight. We activate the beacon as agreed by our ancestors. If you receive this message, we beg for your help. We have nothing to offer but gratitude." The 12 members of the Earth Defense Council sat in silence as the message ended. Some looked shocked, others skeptical. Admiral June's expression remained unreadable, the scars on his face from the resource wars telling stories his mouth never would. "Could be a trap," said General Park, tapping her fingers on the polished table. "Or a test." "It's neither," said Dr. Hana, the lead xenobiologist who had been called in to analyze the message. She was younger than most in the room, her lab coat slightly rumpled from working through the night. "The signal carries biological markers we've never seen before, but they're consistent with what we'd expect from non-Earth life." She pulled up data on the main screen. "Based on the transmission's stellar coordinates and the embedded visual data, I've been able to compile a profile of these Ellerans." Images appeared, elegant blue-skinned beings with large, luminous eyes in what appeared to be cities of crystal and silver. "The Ellerans are peaceful," Hana explained, "not just culturally but biologically. Analysis of their biochemistry shows they lack adrenal glands as we understand them. Their bodies cannot produce cortisol, adrenaline, or other stress hormones. They're literally incapable of aggression or fighting. The Voidborne exploit this weakness." She showed another image, dark ships shaped like twisted bones against the backdrop of a burning planet. Commander Du, head of the 7th Fleet's Marine Division, scoffed. His broad shoulders shifted under his uniform as he leaned forward. "So they need us because we're dangerous? Because we know how to kill?" Several council members nodded uncomfortably. Humanity's unified government had only formed after centuries of warfare had nearly destroyed Earth. The scars of those conflicts, environmental, social, and personal, were still fresh enough to sting. Admiral June finally spoke, his deep voice filling the room. "They need us because we understand survival." All eyes turned to him. "Humanity didn't evolve on a garden world," June continued. "We survived ice ages, predators, diseases, and our own worst impulses. We clawed our way up from the mud, fighting every step. These Ellerans never had to. Now they face something they can't negotiate with or understand." He stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city rebuilt after the last war. "We spent thousands of years fighting each other. Now we have a chance to fight for someone else." The council debated for hours. Some argued that Earth should stay isolated, that involving themselves in an alien conflict could bring the Voidborne to their doorstep. Others saw opportunity, technology exchange, new resources, perhaps even territory. Admiral June listened to it all, then simply said, "If We ignore this call today. Who will answer when we need help tomorrow? The vote was 9-3 in favor of intervention. Prepare the 7th Fleet for immediate deployment, June ordered Commander Du as they left the council chambers. Over the next 3 days, Earth became a hive of activity. The 7th Fleet, 50, of humanity's most advanced warships, prepared for combat. Crews said goodbye to families. Scientists worked around the clock to prepare translation systems and analyze the limited data on the Voidborn. On the flagship Intrepid, Admiral June reviewed battle plans with his senior staff. The holographic display showed the Eleran home system and the approaching Voidborn fleet. Their technology appears more advanced than ours in some areas, Lieutenant Song said, pointing to the propulsion signatures. But they've never encountered resistance. That's our advantage. What about these Voidborn? Asked Commander Du. What do we know about them? Dr. Hana, who had been assigned to the flagship as science advisor, brought up new images. Very little. They appear to be some kind of hive mind species. They don't communicate, they just consume. Entire populations, knowledge bases, technology, all absorbed into their collective. Like a virus, someone muttered. More like a hungry child that doesn't know it's hurting others, Hana corrected, but on a galactic scale. In the ship's mess hall later that night, crew members speculated about what they would find. Many were excited. Humanity had dreamed of the stars for millennia. Others were nervous, checking and rechecking their equipment. A young engineer named Quan approached Admiral June as he ate alone. "Sir," she said, standing at attention. "May I ask a question?" June nodded. "Are we doing this because it's right, or because we want what they have?" June considered the question. "Both," he finally said. "Humans are complicated. We can be selfish and selfless at the same time, but I believe our better nature will win out." Dawn broke over Earth on deployment day. Families gathered at viewing platforms to watch the fleet depart. The ships, sleek and powerful, moved into position above Earth. On the bridge of the Intrepid, Admiral June gave the order that would change humanity's place in the galaxy forever. All ships prepare for faster-than-light jump. Course set for the Eleran home system. The great engines of 50 warships ignited simultaneously, tearing holes in space-time. Within moments, they vanished from Earth's skies, leaving behind only their vapor trails and the hope of those watching below. Within days, the fleet traveled what would have taken light years to cross. Humanity's first official contact with Galactic. Civilization would be as its defenders, arriving with weapons ready and the determination forged from millennia of fighting to survive. The human fleet emerged near Elora Prime, their massive battleships causing panic until Ambassador Taya established communication. 50 warships, dark against the blue-green backdrop of Elora Prime, appeared from the emptiness of space like metal predators. Their hulls bore scars from past conflicts, their weapon systems humming with ready power. To the Elorans watching from their orbital platforms, the sight was terrifying. These ships were clearly designed for one purpose: war. Panic spread across the Eloran homeworld. Never had they seen vessels with such obvious destructive capability. The Council's emergency broadcasts struggled to maintain calm as citizens fled to underground shelters. Many believed they had made a terrible mistake. They had called for help and invited destroyers instead. Ambassador Taya stood alone in the communication center, her hands trembling as she established a link to the largest vessel. "This is Ambassador Taiser of the Eloran Confederation. We sent the beacon. Are you from Earth?" There was a moment of silence before a deep voice responded. "This is Admiral June of the United Earth Defense Fleet. We received your call for help." Those simple words sent waves of relief through the command center. The humans had understood. They had come. 6 hours later, a small human shuttle docked with the Eleran orbital station. Ambassador Taya waited nervously with a small welcome party, none of whom had ever seen a human in person. When the airlock opened, she couldn't help but gasp. Admiral June stood taller than any Eloran, his body solid with muscle beneath his dark uniform. His face bore scars that no Eloran would ever have. Their medical technology would have removed such marks immediately. But what struck Taya most were his eyes, dark, alert, constantly scanning, assessing, the eyes of a creature that had evolved to watch for danger. "Welcome to Elora Prime, Admiral," she said, performing the traditional greeting gesture, hands open, palms forward. Admiral June nodded, attempting to return the gesture. Behind him stood 5 other humans, each wearing different uniforms that Taya would later learn denoted their specialties: weapons, tactics, science, medicine, and communications. "Your message said you face extinction," June said directly. "We need to know everything about this enemy." 2 hours later, in the grand meeting chamber aboard the human flagship Intrepid, Taya sat surrounded by star maps and tactical displays. Heloran scientists and human officers worked together, bridging language and cultural gaps with remarkable speed. "Your ships are designed for war," she observed when alone with Admiral June, watching human crew members efficiently preparing defense. "Systems. Everything about them, about you, is built for conflict." June nodded, not taking his eyes from a tactical display. "On Earth, we evolved alongside predators," he explained. "Creatures that hunted us, weather that killed us, diseases that decimated us. Preparedness kept us alive." He finally looked at her. "Your people evolved without these pressures. Your worlds were gentle." "Yes," Taya said. "Our scholars believe that's why we developed such advanced medicine and art, while your people focused on weapons and defenses." "Different paths," June replied. "Neither wrong." Their conversation was interrupted when Lieutenant Sun entered the chamber. The young officer moved with the quick, precise steps of someone bringing urgent news. Her uniform was stained with some dark substance, and she carried a datapad in gloved hands. "Report," June ordered. "Our scout ships reached the outer system," Sun said, her voice professional but tight with contained emotion. "We lost 2 vessels but managed to gather critical intelligence." She activated a holographic display showing strange, asymmetrical ships with surfaces that seemed to shift and pulse like living tissue. "The Voidborn consume sentient species to expand their hive mind. They're accelerating their attack," Sun continued. "They're not just destroying colonies. They're absorbing knowledge, culture, even consciousness. The more they consume, the smarter they become." Sun's hand trembled slightly. "We captured one of their smaller vessels. It contained partial consciousness from absorbed Elorans. They're still aware inside the collective, still suffering." Taya felt her legs weaken. In Eloran culture, the idea of consciousness continuing after death in a state of suffering was the worst possible fate. Several Eloran scientists in the room had to be escorted out. "How long until they reach Elora Prime?" June asked, his face grim. 18 hours, Sun replied. "Their main fleet is larger than we estimated, at least 300 vessels." The chamber fell silent. The human fleet numbered only 50 ships. For the next hour, June and his commanders outlined a strategy. Taya watched in horrified fascination as they discussed tactics that involved deliberate sacrifice, suicidal maneuvers, and radiation levels that would kill any living creature. June outlined a strategy that made Taya's skin pale. "This will cost many human lives," she said when she understood what they intended. "Your crews will die by the thousands." "We know," he replied simply. "That's why we came." Later, as Eloran technicians helped modify human weapons to be more effective against the Voidborn ships, Taya found Admiral June alone on an observation deck, staring at the peaceful blue-green world below. "I don't understand," she said. "Why would your people die for strangers? We have nothing to offer you." June was silent for a long moment. "When I was a child," he finally said, "my village was caught in a flood. Strangers came in boats to save us, risking their lives in raging waters. When I asked my father why they would do this, he said, 'Because someday we might be the ones in boats.'" He turned to face her. "You called. We answered. That's enough." The alert klaxons began to sound. The Voidborn had been detected entering the system, moving faster than predicted. The battle for Elora Prime was about to begin. Captain Jin led his ship through the chaos of battle, coordinating with Tactical Officer Yoon as they targeted Voidborn command vessels. The void between Elora Prime and its outer moon had transformed into a storm of light and destruction. Human warships, vastly outnumbered but fighting with desperate precision, cut through the void-born fleet like sharks among jellyfish. The smaller human vessels darted between the massive alien ships, their weapons finding weak points that Eloran sensors had never detected. On the bridge of the destroyer Dauntless, Captain Jin gripped the command rail as his ship shuddered under enemy fire. Sweat beaded on his forehead, but his voice remained steady as he called out orders. "Evasive pattern Delta, bring us around for another pass on the lead vessel." The view screen showed the battlefield, a three-dimensional nightmare of twisting, metal and energy beams. 3 human cruisers had already been destroyed, their debris forming a glittering cloud that other ships now used for cover. Tactical Officer Yoon, her fingers dancing across the weapons console, called out, "Target locked! Firing solution ready! Fire!" Jin ordered. The Dauntless shuddered as its main batteries unleashed streams of high-energy particles that punched through the strange, organic-looking hull of a void-born command ship. The enemy vessel leaked a strange, luminous fluid into space, but continued its advance. "Minimal damage," Yoon reported, frustration evident in her voice. "Their outer hull regenerates almost instantly." Jin studied the tactical display. The human fleet was performing brilliantly, each ship fighting with the coordination that came from years of training. But the void-born vessels simply absorbed punishment that would have destroyed any human craft. "New plan," he said, opening a channel to Admiral June's flagship. "Admiral, their command ships are too heavily armored for our weapons, but our scans show vulnerable points inside their hull structure. You're suggesting boarding actions?" Admiral June's voice was calm despite the sounds of battle in the background. "Yes, sir. My ship carries a full marine complement. We can get close enough to launch boarding pods." There was a pause, and Jin knew the Admiral was calculating the odds and the cost. Boarding a void-born vessel would almost certainly be a one-way trip. "Approved," June finally said. "But only volunteers." Jin needn't have worried about finding volunteers. When he announced the mission over the ship's comm, every Marine on board stepped forward. In the loading bay, Sergeant Min briefed his team as they prepared their combat suits. The 30 Marines checked weapons and life support systems, their faces serious but determined. "Atmospheric readings from the scout drones show toxic environments inside their ships," Min explained, his voice steady. "Even with our suits, we have maybe 30 minutes before the corrosive atmosphere compromises our systems." A young Marine named Hosu asked, "What exactly are we doing once we're inside, Sarge?" Min activated a holographic display showing a strange, pulsing structure deep within the enemy flagship. "This appears to be their central nervous system. Our scientists have developed a memetic virus that should disrupt their hive-mind connection. We plant the device here," he pointed, "and get out if we can." No one mentioned that getting out was unlikely. They didn't need to. "Boarding team ready," reported Sergeant Min over comms as his Marines loaded into the sleek armored pods. Each pod, barely larger than the 6 Marines it contained, was essentially a guided missile with life support. On the bridge, Captain Jin gave the order. "Launch boarding pods." 5 pods shot from the Dauntless toward the massive void-born flagship. Enemy point defense systems immediately targeted them, destroying 2 pods in brilliant flashes of light. The remaining 3 struck the alien hull like arrows, drills extending to cut through the strange, semi-organic material. Minutes later, Min's voice came through the static. "We're in. Moving toward the central node." On the command flagship Intrepid, Admiral June watched the battle with growing concern. Despite the valor of his fleet, the void-born ships were slowly encircling them, cutting off escape routes back to Elora Prime. The boarding action was their best hope, but even if successful, it might not be enough. "The boarding teams need more time," Communications Officer Bay reported, "and the Voidborn are adapting to our tactics." June closed his eyes briefly. He had hoped to avoid this. "Signal the designated ships," he ordered quietly. "Initiate Operation Firebreak." When the Voidborn surrounded the human fleet, Admiral June initiated the radiation pulse. 17 human ships, all volunteers, all knowing what was asked of them, moved into predetermined positions. Their engines began to glow with unnatural brightness as they overloaded their reactor cores. On the Eloran command station, Ambassador Tyre watched in horror as she realized what was happening. "They're sacrificing themselves," she whispered. 17. Suns bloomed in space as the human ships detonated their reactors, creating a massive wave of radiation specifically calibrated to the Voidborn's neural frequencies. The blast washed over the enemy fleet, causing their ships to shudder and drift. On the enemy flagship, Sergeant Min's team fought through corridors filled with a thick, yellowish atmosphere that ate through their suit material. 2 Marines had already fallen, their suits breached by both the atmosphere and strange tentacle-like defenses that emerged from the walls. Min, carrying the device containing the mimetic virus, reached the central chamber, a vast space filled with pulsing brain-like tissue interconnected with technology beyond human understanding. Ghostly faces seemed to form and dissolve in the tissue, the absorbed consciousness of countless victims. "For Earth and Elora," Min said as he activated the device and slammed it into the central mass. The tissue recoiled, then enveloped the device, exactly as the scientists had predicted it would. The radiation pulse hit at that moment, temporarily stunning the ship's defenses. Min's team fought their way back toward their entry point, but the corrosive atmosphere had done its work. Suit integrity was failing for all of them. Min knew they wouldn't make it out. With failing life support and the ship beginning to recover from the radiation pulse, he opened a final communication channel. Virus uploaded. "It's working." His voice was strained as his suit's oxygen supply faltered. Through viewport panels, he could see other Voidborn ships beginning to fire on each other as the virus spread through their communication network. Mission complete. Those were the last words from the boarding team. The Voidborn fleet suddenly fragmented as the hive mind, lost cohesion, began firing upon itself. Ship after ship turned weapons on its neighbors, their collective consciousness shattered by the combined effect of the radiation pulse and the mimetic virus. The battle wasn't over. Many Voidborn ships remained functional, but the tide had turned. The sacrifice of 17 ships and their crews, of Min's boarding team and the others, had created the opening the human fleet needed. Captain Jin, watching the Voidborn fleet tear itself apart, whispered a quiet prayer for the fallen before, turning to Tactical Officer Yoon. "Target any ship still on course for Elora Prime. We finish this now." Ambassador Taya watched the humans recover their dead with solemn ceremony. She had never understood death rituals until now. 3 days had passed since the battle. The skies above Elora Prime, once filled with the chaos of war, now held only drifting debris and the remaining human ships. The Voidborn fleet had retreated. To the system's edge, their hive mind shattered, their purpose forgotten. For the first time in months, the Elorans could breathe without fear of extinction. But the cost had been terrible. From the observation deck of the human flagship Intrepid, Taya watched as small recovery vessels moved methodically through the battlefield. Each time they found a human body floating in the vacuum, they would gently recover it and wrap it in a cloth bearing strange symbols. The humans called it a flag. An Eloran scientist beside her whispered, "Why do they risk more lives to recover the dead? The bodies are just empty vessels now." Taya had wondered the same thing, but after watching the human crews work tirelessly for hours, she began to understand. These weren't just bodies to the humans. They were fallen brothers and sisters who deserved to return home. Within the Intrepid's vast hangar bay, the recovered dead were laid in rows, each covered with the same flag. Human crew members would stop as they passed, offering small gestures, AI, touch to the heart, a whispered word, a moment of silence. Some left small objects beside the bodies, photographs, letters, personal items. Admiral June had invited Eloran representatives to observe the memorial service. Taya stood at the back of the hangar, feeling out of place among the grieving humans. Their emotions were so raw, so visible. Elorans rarely displayed such feelings, especially not about death. The ceremony began with a single human playing a mournful melody on what they called a trumpet. The sound echoed through the hangar, haunting and beautiful. Then Admiral June spoke, his voice carrying to every corner without technological amplification. "We are gathered to honor those who gave their lives so others might live," he began. "They came to a distant star to defend people they had never met, because it was right. Because when the innocent call for help, The strong must answer. He read the names of every lost crew member, over 3,000 in total. Each name was followed by a ship assignment and rank. It took nearly an hour, and not once did his voice falter. After the ceremony, the human crew dispersed quietly to their duties. The recovery ships continued their solemn work outside. Taya found herself standing before a vast wall where names were being etched into metal, a permanent memorial. Admiral June joined her there, his uniform crisp, despite the exhaustion evident in his eyes. "Your people died for strangers," she said, unable to comprehend the sacrifice. They volunteered for missions they knew they wouldn't survive. The boarding teams, the ships that detonated their cores, they chose to die. June studied the growing list of names. "Did you know that on Earth we have thousands of monuments to those who died saving others? It's woven into our history, our literature, our beliefs." "But why?" Taya asked. "Your species seems to value survival above all else. Your ships, your weapons, your tactics, all designed to survive, yet you willingly sacrifice yourselves." "We evolved on a world that tried to kill us daily," he explained. "Predators hunted us. Weather destroyed our homes. Disease ravaged our populations. Every day was a fight to live." He turned to face her. "It taught us to value all life fiercely. When you fought so hard to survive, you understand what it means when others can't fight for themselves." On Elora Prime, the Confederation Council had convened an emergency session. The central question, what would their relationship with humans be now that the immediate threat had passed? Councillor Wren argued for caution. "These humans saved us, yes, but you've seen their weapons, their comfort with violence. What if they decide our worlds would make good colonies?" Elder Nori, who had initially opposed contacting Earth, now spoke in the humans' defense. "They could have let us die. Instead, they sacrificed their own. That speaks to their character more than any words could." The debate continued for hours. Some councillors pointed to human history, centuries of warfare and conquest, as reason for concern. Others noted how carefully the human fleet had avoided Eloran's civilian casualties, even when it put their own ships at risk. In the end, the council voted to propose a formal alliance. Eloran technology in exchange for human protection. Cultural exchange to begin immediately. A permanent human presence in their star system. As the council session ended, Taya received word that human medical ships had arrived, not warships, but vessels dedicated to healing. They carried supplies, medicine, and human doctors eager to help refugees from the outer colonies. She traveled to the main refugee center, a sprawling complex on Elora Prime's southern continent. There she found human medical teams working alongside Eloran doctors. The humans were surprisingly gentle, their battle-hardened hands now carefully tending wounds, comforting children, rebuilding what had been broken. A human doctor named Gil paused from treating an injured Eloran child to explain why they'd come. "After every war comes healing," he said simply. "That's as much a part of who we are as the fighting." When Taya returned to the Intrepid for a final meeting with Admiral June, she found him in a quiet room filled with small flames, what humans called candles, each representing a lost crew member. "We've begun discussions about a permanent defense." "Pact," she told him. "Many on the council still fear your capacity for violence, but none can deny what your people sacrificed." June nodded. "Fear is natural. We fear ourselves sometimes." "Will your people agree to protect us?" she asked. "There will be other threats beyond the Voidborn." "Yes," he said without hesitation. "You called, we answered. That bond doesn't break." As she prepared to leave, Taya watched human crew members going about their duties. Yesterday's warriors were today's builders, healers, teachers. They moved with purpose, with determination, with hope. She thought about how different their evolution had been from her own people's. The Elorans had evolved in gentle worlds, developing art, music, philosophy, but never learning to defend themselves. Humans had evolved fighting for every breath, developing the strength to survive, and paradoxically the compassion to sacrifice. As medical ships arrived with more supplies and aid, Taya realized the truth. Those who knew death intimately understood life's value best. The galaxy's harshest children had become its guardians, not despite their capacity for violence, but because of what that harsh evolution had taught them about the preciousness of life. And perhaps, she thought, the Elorans had something to teach humanity in return.